After I release the Bryce Anderson video, I take my dog on a walk and I don't even get to the end of the block before my phone starts blowing up about the newest addition to the University of Texas's class, Bryan Allen Jr. And we need to talk about why this is such a monstrous commit and why this is so important for the future of this class moving forward. So you don't want to miss it. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all. So be sure to hop down to the comments and give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Are you excited for the commitment of Bryan Allen Jr. and what this means for the future of this Texas class? Let me know what you're thinking and why you're so excited about this commitment. Guys, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification, that way you don't miss any of my uploads because I do constant college football content, player reviews, film analysis, or general talk style videos like this, and I'm on my journey to 5,000 subscribers, but I can't do that on my own, and I'd love to have you along for the journey. If you enjoy the content, be sure to like and comment down below because that stuff really does go a long ways in helping content creators like myself get picked up by the YouTube algorithm. But with all of that being said, let's hop straight into Bryan Allen Jr. And what a day for the University of Texas, on a day where I just released a video talking about how I thought they were in prime position to land Bryce Anderson, another top safety, one of the most coveted defensive backs in the nation. Not even 30 minutes goes by after my video comes out that Bryan Allen Jr. announces his commitment to the University of Texas, and I love what Steve Sarkisian and company are doing here. But before we really break down the importance and the implications of this commitment, let's talk about Bryan Allen Jr. and what he adds. First and foremost, I talked about this in the last video, but I'm going to talk about it again because he is the 88th best player in the nation, the 6th best safety in the nation, which we talked about in a video the other day, how the defensive back class in this year's recruiting cycle is unbelievable. But probably the nuttiest factor about him is that he is the 88th best player in the nation and is the 18th best player in the state of Texas. The state of Texas is so unbelievably loaded with talent right now, and Steve Sarkisian and company are having a field day with it all. There is so much talent, and they are making it a point to capitalize on what the state has to offer, especially after what happened last cycle. I'm not going to go through it. Y'all have heard me talk about it so many times, and the past is the past. But you cannot have the losses you had last cycle and expect to be successful. Not when you have teams like OU being as successful as they are on the recruiting trail. You need to be able to match that. And right now in this class of 2022, Texas is certainly matching everything any school in the nation not named Ohio State is doing, and Ohio State is just off to another freaky run just like they were off to at the beginning of last year's class. But right now, the University of Texas ranks 4th in the nation in recruiting, and this surge isn't going to stop just here. Because one of the things I love about what Steve Sarkisian and them are doing is even though they have their guys that are top targets, they're not waiting. It's something we saw with the Quinn Ewers situation where they still wanted Quinn. They were still going after him, but they were going to go and get their guy regardless. And it's this attitude that Nick Saban and staff have as well. And it's this attitude of, you can either join us and win with us, or we're going to win without you. We're just really focused on getting a collective together and getting a process together to succeed. We'd love to have you, but if you don't decide to come, this is our plan whether you're here or not. And to me, that is the very clear message Sark is sending. And this isn't a message of disrespect. This isn't a shot at any player. That's not my intention by this. And so I hope that it doesn't get taken like that. My intention by this is they're putting the pressure on the recruits. I love this recruiting style because this is a lot of what Bama does. And it's the same confidence that Bama brings to the recruiting table. And when you look at who Bryan Allen Jr. was landed by, no surprise, Jeff Banks, a guy who was just on staff with Alabama and a guy who was just rated as a top 10 recruiter in the nation. And one of the things you've heard me say on this channel that's so important to the University of Texas's recruiting class, especially as it sits right now, was landing a top 100 guy on defense. You already had 2 guys on the class that were very good defenders who had promising careers, but landing a top 100 guy on defense really adds an air of legitimacy that the class didn't have yet. Remember, at the point when Texas had 6 commitments, 4 of the guys in the class were offensive. All 4 of those guys ranked inside the top 100. And even though the defense, like I just said, very talented prospects, you want to add that air of legitimacy by adding in a top 100 guy. And what a guy to get. Bryan Allen Jr., one of the most coveted prospects in the nation. And we need to talk about who the University of Texas beat out for this commitment. And one of the things that's incredibly interesting to me, and one of the reasons why I actually think it might even be more likely that Bryce Anderson commits now, is they were both former LSU commits. Both guys, formerly a part of the LSU Tigers, didn't like what they were seeing there, decided to open up their recruitment again, and now Bryan Allen Jr. finds his home with the University of Texas, and personally, I believe that Bryce Anderson is probably going to go to the University of Texas as well. But these two guys together, if the University of Texas can manage to land both of these guys, what a DB class they're already starting off to. Because they already have an incredible offensive class, but just being able to add in that legitimacy on the defensive side is going to be huge. The two recruiters who were after Bryan Allen Jr. were Blake Gideon and Jeff Banks. Now, Blake Gideon is another one who is also after Bryce Anderson, so now he gets to tell Bryce Anderson, I just landed another top safety. I'd really love to have you come in here. And I want to kind of re-go over something I said earlier, because I really hope it doesn't get taken the wrong way, because sometimes people kind of will have this look of surprise by this pitch that Saban does of, we will either win with you or without you. It's not a message of disrespect for the kid. It's just letting them know we're trying to build something special, and it's going to be larger than any one person. It's going to be a collective, and we would love for you to be a part of that, but if you don't, this collective is going to happen regardless. And that's the pitch right now. That's what Sark is doing, and it's putting pressure on recruits. And I just love that we're seeing this Texas Longhorns recruiting staff really starting to pay the dividends. And they have gotten off to an incredibly hot start for the class of 2022. You know, we talked about how the only other team that's any hotter in the nation right now is Ohio State. Ohio State had the luxury of continuity at the coaching staff positions. Right now, Texas having a completely new coaching staff might have an argument for the hottest team in the nation in recruiting when you really factor in that they didn't have the luxury of continuity. Now, they still aren't the best team in the nation in recruiting right now. Ohio State is just on to another incredible class. But the University of Texas, if they continue like this, they could be vying for that number one spot. And of course, my Alabama Crimson Tide will eventually find their way up there. That's understood if we know Nick Saban for anything. But the University of Texas has a lot to be excited about. And it's awesome to see a guy who is just ranked as one of the top recruiters in the nation at Alabama in Jeff Banks go to Texas and land a top 100 guy from the state of Texas, Bryan Allen Jr., to be the first guy, the first top 100 defensive recruit of the Steve Sarkisian era. And what a recruit for that to be. Texas fans, I can't wait to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking, because I think this is an awesome commitment. And I actually personally think this helps the process of trying to get Bryce Anderson. But let me know. That's it. See ya.